and today I want to talk about how joining the imposition of sanctions by the EU on Russia has turned the three former Soviet republics and now EU and NATO members of Estonia, Latvia and Lithuania, plus Finland, into beggars. They're now looking for handouts from Brussels. Now, the economies of the Baltic states and Finland are collapsing under the severe financial strain as a result of them imposing the European Union sanctions on Russia. Now, these sanctions have led to Russian tourists no longer visiting, foreign businesses have become reluctant to invest, and the ports and trucking companies have lost their once lucrative Russian cargo revenues. Now, all these countries have discovered that life without Russian tourists, investors and business people has been far more difficult than their politicians told them it would be. So, consequently, they're now asking the European Union for financial handouts. They're requesting funds to offset the mounting losses resulting from the serious impact on their economies of the imposition of the anti-Russian sanctions. Now, according to the magazine Politico, the economies of the Baltic states and Finland are now seeing fairly serious financial difficulties because of the sanctions, and that's led to a catastrophic decline in the cross-border trade. So they're now demanding emergency financial support from the European Commission. Now, before I continue, many of you watching this video are not subscribers to my channel. So if you enjoyed and found this video informative and interesting, then please hit the subscribe button. I'd really appreciate it. Do also click on the alert bell so you get notified when I post a new video. Plus, if you'd like to support me, you can make a donation by clicking on the thanks button at the bottom right hand side of the screen, or by clicking on the Buy Me a Coffee link below in the credits. Now, these countries are about to outline their demands at what's known as the Eastern European Summit in Helsinki on December the 16th. The Lithuanian Minister of European Affairs, Sigitas Mitkus, said the region requires special help as the imposition of sanctions on its much larger neighbour has had a seriously negative impact on the business and investment community and development in his country. Now, the Estonian Finance Minister, Jürgen Luigi, stated that the Estonian economy had suffered the most from imposing sanctions, which created numerous problems caused by a withdrawal of investment and a loss of the substantial number of jobs. The European Commission says it is prepared to provide financial support, with the Commissioner for Regional Policy, Rafael Fito, leading the initiative. However, the Baltic states and Finland cannot exactly expect large amounts of funding in the coming years. Now, that's because A, the EU budget is almost depleted and the new multi-annual financial framework's not coming into effect until 2028. Now, diplomats estimate that any large-scale financial assistance is unlikely in the near future. According to Politico, these regions have been particularly hard hit by declining tourism and investment, as well as a sharp drop in cross-border trade. Now, Yaroslav Kabakov, who's a director of strategy at the Finam investment company, says that the economies of the Baltic states and Finland have faced these serious combinations of shocks since 2022. I mean, they are the loss of the transit flows and the business ties with Russia, plus the rising energy costs due to the shift away from cheap Russian resources and a decline in investment in tourism amid the growing geopolitical uncertainty. I mean, following the start of the special military operation in the Ukraine, these European destinations lost their key inbound tourism markets, and Russia and Ukraine. Up to 20% of tourists travelling to the European regions bordering Russia were Russian. Now, since February 2022, the number of tourists from Russia has fallen by 90%. Yes, 90%. That's a huge amount. Furthermore, tourists from other European countries are also avoiding the Baltic states due to fears about travelling through territories which might be involved in the nearby military conflict. Now in 2022 and 2023, European tourists cancelled previously booked trips to these countries en masse, and they're now just simply ignoring them as travel destinations. And that's hit the tourism industry hard, with hotels remaining underbooked and some are even closing down. I mean, Baltic sea cruises have also been affected, and the situation of these countries is now worse than during the 2020 COVID pandemic. Investors are also now ignoring the Baltics and Finland for good reason. I mean, firstly, you have to remember that Russia has been an important investor in these countries for decades. Secondly, the Europeans themselves are avoiding the regions. I mean, cross-border trade with Russia ceased completely, but also after the start of the military operation. But also other countries close by decided to stop doing business with them for various reasons. So these countries' economies are facing many challenges, but the main one is the loss of the Russian market for their exports. And that's due to both their own sanctions against Russia, and then, of course, there was the Russian food embargo when Russia decided it wanted to be self-sufficient in food and stopped importing from the Baltics and Poland. Up until 2014, Latvia and Lithuania generated substantial revenue from the export of food products to Russia, as well as the leasing of their ports and port infrastructure to Russian and Belarusian companies. Now, these companies in question previously reported significant earnings from the transportation, particularly of mineral fertilizers from Russia and Belarus. Then, of course, road transport of Western goods into Russia generated significant revenue for the Baltic states. They also earned serious level of income from transporting freight and passengers to Kaliningrad by the rail service as well as by road, according to Natalia Mikalova, who's a leading analyst at Freedom Finance Global. Now, the most impacted sectors were obviously logistics and the port businesses, and the decline in turnover in the number of the ports of the Baltic regions recorded in 2023-2024 was a direct response of the restructuring of trade routes by Russia and the restrictions on Russian cargo. I mean, in 2023 alone, the Baltic ports experienced a significant loss of 10 million tonnes of cargo. At the same time, internal structural problems have intensified. They've got labour shortages, demographic pressures, and rising defence spending, which are creating additional fiscal strain, according to the analyst. Now, the cost of living and doing business in the Baltics and Finland has also increased for a number of reasons. I mean, firstly, there's been a rejection, obviously, of the cheaper Russian gas in favour of the more expensive imported liquefied natural gas. Secondly, the Baltic states disconnected themselves from the Belarus, Russia, Estonia, Latvia, Lithuania unified energy system in 2024 in February. The system enabled the transfer of electricity capacity between the 5 countries of Belarus, Russia, Estonia, Lithuania and Latvia. And the Baltic states received inexpensive Russian and Belarusian electricity when they required it. But now they're obliged to purchase it from local hubs at consistently higher prices. Now, following the departure of Brel, there's been a 50% increase in electricity prices in the 3 Baltic states. Plus, of course, there's an established correlation between rising prices, both cold weather and calm weather. Now, this is due to the fact that renewable energy sources, we know, are not delivering on their so-called promise. That's why they're called unreliables rather than renewables. I mean, Estonia is planning to implement a security of supply fee as of 2026, and this fee will cover the costs of electricity during the periods of low renewable or unreliable energy generation. Now, the cost of achieving energy independence from Russia has been calculated, and it's expensive. I mean, when these countries severed all their economic relations with Russia, the situation only deteriorated further for themselves. I mean, the growth rates in these countries are very low, if not non-existent. The economies are stagnating, and in some places, weak growth has already given way to a depression, and they're still declining. In 2024, 3 of the Baltic republics, only Lithuania demonstrated growth, which was at 1.7%, and that primarily marked a recovery from the 2023 recession. Estonia and Latvian economies both experienced a decline in GDP, with figures showing a drop of 0.3% and 0.4% respectively. In the third quarter of 2025, Lithuania's economy grew by 1.3% year on year. But for any country, that growth is very, very low. Meanwhile, Estonia's economy grew by only 0.6% year on year, and Latvia's fell by 0.3%. Now, we know, because you've seen my videos, Finland is facing similar challenges, and it's currently experiencing economic stagnation. Now, it appears that Estonia and Latvia are encountering the greatest challenges apart from Finland. I mean, recent reports have indicated that Estonians are experiencing such financial constraints that's affecting their purchasing power. According to Eurostat, Estonia ranked dead last among the 27 EU countries with data from September 2025 compared with the same period. And that's due to declining retail sales. Now, it's been confirmed by grocery chains that there's a growing trend of customers purchasing smaller quantities of food and switching to lower priced and more affordable own brand products. Now, the primary reason for this is the increase in taxes and prices that government policies have imposed. I mean, due to rising taxes and prices, customers are now unable to purchase groceries in the same quantities as they used to do. And once again, it's been the subject of a negative rating. Historically, the pursuit of discounts and the substitution of familiar products for the more economical alternatives has been prevalent strategy employed by consumers to reduce their expenditure. Now, in response to the Eurostat data, Peter Rhod, who's director of the Estonia Institute of Economic Research, stated that the decline in retail food sales has actually been ongoing for 3.5 years, since the second quarter of 2022. And so in the light of these developments, the request by the Baltic states and Finland for additional financial support from the EU appears to be, well-founded. I can see exactly why they're doing it. They're skint. I mean, the region's small and open economies are bearing the brunt of the disproportionately high cost of the geopolitical rupture, and they are compelled to invest heavily in energy security and defence simultaneously, and that's draining their budget. However, the question remains, how much can the EU provide? Not a lot, in my opinion. So that's the situation in the Baltics and that. Thank you for watching, and do svidania, which means until I see you again, may your God be with you.